Welcome into another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here. And Dalton, we're finally finished ranking all of the positions in college football, but we're not done with rankings just yet. Now we're doing position unit rankings with my top 10 quarterback rooms in college football entering the 2025 season. Obviously, having a good quarterback is paramount in college football, with it really being the most important position in sports. But also, if your starter gets hurt or if he's not playing that well, you got to have some good backups behind him too. So this is kind of a ranking of not only the starters, but also the entire room, the backup, the third-string quarterback, maybe even the fourth-string quarterback, just who has the best overall room in college football.
You know why I like that you do this list specifically out of all these unit rankings? Because there's so many people that can do, who's got the top receiving core, offensive line, defensive line, everybody does that, right? But when you talk about the quarterback rooms, I always think about during the course of a season, even just last year, how many different times, how many different moments did a backup have to step in and do something that was crucial to their team's success, right? I think about even SMU's situation with Preston Stone and Kevin Jennings, with Stone struggling early. Jennings took him to the playoff. Does Penn State make the playoff if Bo Prabula doesn't come in the second half against Wisconsin and bring them back to a win, right? I think about Austin Simmons and the drive he had against Georgia, or Steve Angeli getting a field goal against Penn State in the Final Four, right? So these are moments that you think about. You go, there's certain teams with great quarterbacks, and they go, as long as this guy stays healthy. Well, a lot of times, even for small stretches, it could be a half, it could be a quarter, even one drive, you're going to need somebody else to step up here. So it's really important at this position, even though there's only one guy on the field at a time, to have that depth and to have somebody else who can step up, because so often it's that guy right behind the starter that makes a big difference in your season.
Absolutely. And by the way, we will be ranking every running back unit, receiving core, O-line, D-line, linebacker unit, secondary, coming out very soon on this channel. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those videos. And of course, subscribe to PFF Plus as well if you want to get access to all the stats that I had when making all of these top 10 lists as well. So let's start off, Dalton, with my honorable mention quarterback room. That is the Texas Longhorns. Now, of course, Arch Manning has maybe more hype on him than any other quarterback in college football. Part of it has to do with his last name, and also part of it because he was the #1 overall recruit coming out of 2023, and he impressed on limited snaps last year. He had 88 PFF grade, including 2 starts last year, 88 PFF grade, 12th among all quarterbacks in the country with at least 100 dropbacks. He's right now my #6 quarterback in college football. Of course, we did that video already. If you want to go check out my top 10 quarterbacks in college football, he was #6 in that list, and right now he is the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy on FanDuel Sportsbook as well. Behind Arch Manning, you have a couple former 4-star recruits in redshirt freshman Trey Owens and true freshman KJ Lacey. Each of them were top 20 quarterbacks coming out of high school in their respective classes. So Texas checks in as an honorable mention. Obviously, Arch Manning might have more hype on him than anyone else, like I said before, but they just missed out on being on the top 10 list.
Yeah, I think you're certainly smart to at least get a mention when a team has a Manning in their quarterback room for sure. And look, it's kind of funny because they don't quite have the depth that they did the last 2 years. I mean, how high were they in last year's rankings with Ewers and Manning in the room?
3 or 4, I think.
Right. So, I mean, they lost Malik Murphy last year, and he went to Duke and had a good season. Now Quinn Ewers is went in the NFL draft to the Miami Dolphins. So it's the Arch Manning show. But you mentioned him being #6 in your top 10. Would we really be that shocked if he was #1 by the end of the year? Not at all. That's why he's the Heisman favorite, and he's in a great offense. But the depth takes a hit from what they had the last 2 years as they prepared for Manning to become the starter. Still needs to be mentioned here, though, that they have Arch, and obviously Steve Sarkisian, it feels like, can make any quarterback work that's on the field.
And while this list is really all about, how good your backups are as well, having a great starter is really important for this list too, which is what I think Texas has. And they still have a couple former 4-stars in that quarterback room too, and Trey Owens and KJ Lacey, like I said before as well. So honorable mention is the Texas Longhorns at number 10. And in fact, number 10, number 9, and number 8 have a question on who the starting quarterback will be, but it's still a very good room overall, which is why they made this list. At number 10, though, is the Ohio State Buckeyes, who, of course, lost Will Howard, who got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 2025 draft. They don't really have any starting experience in their quarterback room at all. In fact, none of their quarterbacks have a single start in their collegiate career so far. But Ohio State does have 2 former 5-star recruits and a former 4-star recruit as well in their quarterback room. Right now, the favorite to start in Columbus is Julian Sayin, who is a redshirt freshman in that program. He was a top 10 overall recruit in the 2024 class and the #2 quarterback in the country only behind DJ Lagway in that ranking. Tavian St. Clair, true freshman, number 4 overall recruit in college football, in the high school recruiting, I should say, in 2025, the number 3 quarterback coming out of high school as well. And then you also have a redshirt sophomore in Lincoln Kineholz, who was a top 15 quarterback in the 2023 class, and he has a 72.2 passing grade on 24 career dropbacks. So actually, Kineholz, Dalton, is the most experienced of them. He only has 24 dropbacks to his name so far, but like I said before, you have him who's a former 4-star, and then 2 former 5-stars in Sayin and Tavian St. Clair. That's why they made it on this list. I know you don't love recruiting rankings, but for this quarterback room video especially, it's very important.
For Ohio State especially, because for the last 20 years, all we've seen their quarterbacks do is win Heisman trophies and win national championships and do all these great things, especially with the loaded receiving cores that they've had, arguably wide receiver U in college football. So I think the most interesting part for me is that whoever wins this job, and it does seem like Sayin is going to be the favorite moving forward here, boy, you've got a loaded group to work with, right? Yeah. You've got the best receiver in the country in Jeremiah Smith. You've got Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, Max Clare at tight end, the reload in the running back room with C.J. Donaldson and those guys. So certainly no shortage of weapons, and all they need to do is get the football to them. So as is usually the case with Ohio State, the job should be relatively easy. I think the question mark more so for me is now you're going from Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator to Brian Hartline now, your third offensive coordinator in 3 seasons now. What's the adjustment going to be for Hartline? What's the adjustment going to be for a new quarterback here? But certainly enough weapons to work with, and you mentioned it from the recruiting rankings, enough talent in the room to find somebody who should be able to take the starting job.
Yeah, a couple former 5-star recruits and a 4-star for Ohio State is actually the exact same for my number 9 school on this list. That is Alabama. Another couple former 5-stars in that room as well. And like Ohio State, none of Alabama's quarterbacks have started a game yet in their collegiate career, but also has a lot of potential, like Ohio State too. Right now, the favorite to start is redshirt junior Ty Simpson, who spent 3 years on the bench in Tuscaloosa, despite being a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He has a 83.2 PFF grade on 188 career snaps. So he actually looked pretty impressive when he's been out on the field, but like I said before, has not had that many snaps out there on the field. Behind him, you have a true freshman in Keelan Russell, 5-star also coming out of high school. He was the number 2 overall recruit coming out in the 2025 class. Only Bryce Underwood, the Michigan quarterback, was higher than him. So Keelan Russell, the number 2 quarterback coming out of high school, the number 2 overall player coming out of high school in this past class. And also you still have redshirt sophomore Austin Mack, who's still in that room. He was a 4-star coming out in the 2023 class as well. So pretty much the exact same kind of room Ohio State has, Dawn, a couple former 5-stars and also a 4-star as a third stringer.
A boatload of talent, and I think the focus here needs to be on Simpson, because Kalen DeBoer even said recently if the season started today, Simpson would be the starter, right? And I think he's a little more of a traditional quarterback than Jalen Milroe was, usually operates in the pocket. Got a little bit of mobility, but more so functional mobility if he needs to scramble than being the dynamic athlete that Milroe was. But he wants to throw on time. He throws the ball with touch into the intermediate levels very, very well. I think he's going to get real comfortable. Same thing we said with Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. Going to get comfortable with Ryan Williams out there at Alabama, who's an absolute superstar himself. And then you mentioned it, Russell's really talented, the true freshman. And Austin Mack, didn't he come over with DeBoer from Washington? So he knows the system well also. Alabama's well equipped. I think Simpson is going to get the first shot, but these two guys have a lot of talent behind them. One of them knows the system already, and Russell, you mentioned, the only reason he wasn't the number 1 recruit was because he had Bryce Underwood going up there to Michigan. So this is a talented room. They just have to get one of these guys, likely Ty Simpson, the starting experience.
Absolutely. All right, number 8 is Alabama's arch rival, who also doesn't really have a proven star at quarterback. We do have a proven starter at quarterback, and that is the Auburn Tigers, checking in here at number 8. Jackson Arnold is the new quarterback for the Tigers. He transferred in from Oklahoma. Former 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Wasn't really great as a true sophomore, though. Only had a 63.2 PFF grade. But I want to remind people, the supporting cast at Oklahoma he dealt with was horrendous last year. Oklahoma had the 2nd worst receiving grade in the country and the worst receiving grade in the Power 4, and they were 103rd in offensive line grade as well. I don't care who you are. If you're dealing with that kind of supporting cast, it's most likely you're not going to have a great year out there. Oklahoma's supporting cast is terrible. Auburn's is a lot better. They have one of the best receiving corps in the country and one of the best offensive lines in the country as well. So I'm really expecting a big jump from Jackson Arnold going to Auburn. Ashton Daniels also transferred to Auburn. He was a starting quarterback for Stanford in each of the last 2 years, and in 2024, he was pretty solid. He had a 71.7 PFF grade. And then after that, you have Deuce Knight coming in, who's a true freshman. He was a 5-star recruit in the 2025 class as well. So you have Jackson Arnold, who should be a lot better, former 5-star at Auburn than he was at Oklahoma. Ashton Daniels is a multi-year starter at Stanford, another Power 4 program as well. And you have a 5-star coming in Deuce Knight as well. So why Auburn's on this list.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the theme with the first 2 quarterbacks on this list, because I think ideally you would like to not see Deuce Knight on the field this year. He's a little bit raw. He needs some work. But you look at Arnold and Daniels both coming from poor supporting casts, and you really have to like the options that they have with these two. Obviously, Arnold is the starter, and with a better supporting cast and all that talent and the weapons around him now with Eric Singleton and Cam Coleman and those guys at receiver, Jackson Arnold is set up to succeed, right, at Auburn, and that's going to be the idea here. And even if something happens to him, look, Ashton Daniels, he's a really good athlete. Some ball security issues, but he even had some moments at Stanford. You go back to last year, upset win over your Syracuse Orange, sorry to bring it up, a big upset win over Louisville late in the season that really ruined Louisville's playoff hopes. So I think you look at Daniels in flashes, especially in Hugh Freeze's system, the mobility and the rushing ability could play a big part at some point if something happens to Arnold. But no, this is about the bounce back for Jackson Arnold that he hopes is coming with a better supporting cast, better receivers, better offensive line. We've had top 10 players on your position lists all over the place on offense and defense for Auburn. So that's why the hype is here. And this is really the big question is, can Arnold just fit in? Can he fit in and play his role? And if something happens to him, then you have at least an experienced option with 2 years of starting experience in Ashton Daniels. Auburn's in a good spot. They just have to go out there and execute now.
Yeah, like I said, Jackson Arnold is a talented kid, right? He's a former 5-star coming out of high school. Just wasn't the best year at Oklahoma last year, but like I said, that supporting cast, you could argue, was the worst in college football for a quarterback last year. That offensive line being so beat up and the receiving corps being so beat up as well. They were terrible all around, Jackson Arnold, last year on that Oklahoma offense. So number 8 is Auburn. Number 7, and now these number 7 through number 1 are all going to have kind of proven stars at quarterback, because I do think having a good quarterback room starts with having a really good starting quarterback. At number 7 is the Penn State Nittany Lions. Drew Aller is my number 4 returning quarterback in college football. A lot of people thought he would have been a first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft if he declared. In fact, a lot of people thought he might have even been the number 2 overall pick to the Cleveland Browns if he declared. He decided to return for his senior season. He was the 6th most valuable quarterback in the country this past season, according to our wins above average metric. His 21 big-time throws were a top 20 mark in college football as well, and he takes care of the football at an elite rate. Behind Drew Aller, Bo Pribula is gone. He's now the Missouri starting quarterback, but you still have Ethan Grunkmeyer there, who is a redshirt freshman now. He was one of the 10 highest-rated quarterbacks coming out of the 2024 class, and he should be the next starting quarterback for Penn State once Drew Aller finishes up his senior year. So, yes, Drew Aller's a superstar. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, one of the best quarterbacks in next year's draft, but also you still have a really highly rated redshirt freshman, Ethan Grunkmeyer, who's ready to take over when he's done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it starts with Aller, and look, Aller takes a lot of heat. He takes a lot of criticism. The last game against Notre Dame wasn't good. I get it. Can he win the big game? But look, you know exactly what you're getting out of him. You're getting a top 10 quarterback. You're getting a guy who protects the football even with a big arm, and he got a lot better under Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator last year. Who knows how much longer you'll have him as well. You get one more year at Aller. It might be the same case with Coach Kotelnicki there, but either way, it's a good room. They've been getting Grunkmeyer ready to be the future of this program. I do wonder if Bo Pribula had stayed and he's getting a starting opportunity. I don't blame him for leaving. I wonder if they might have been number 1 on this list if Pribula had stayed, because we saw the flashes of him either as a Wildcat guy or in a stint. We mentioned the game earlier against Wisconsin where played pretty well. But either way, you've got Aller, you've got Grunkmeyer. You feel good about that. And to me, you feel great about Kotelnicki as the play caller, and hopefully what Penn State has done at wide receiver this offseason, maybe to finally fix that problem, because to me, it's really not about Aller and his failures. Although, there's been 1 or 2 here and there. The last pick against Notre Dame, obviously not good. You can't throw that ball, but wide receivers didn't catch a single ball in that game. So if you can help him out, Drew Aller can be elite quarterback in college football.
And like I said, we will be ranking my top 10 receiving cores in college football coming out very soon. Penn State, I think, will be mentioned somewhere on that list too, which is something we could not say for the Nittany Lions the last few years, but I think they really addressed the receiver position in the transfer portal really well. We'll maybe get to them in that receiving cores episode coming out very soon as well. So number 7 is the Penn State Nittany Lions, though, with Drew Aller and Ethan Grunkmeyer. At number 6 is Miami, with Carson Beck transferring in from Georgia. Carson Beck, in my opinion, is still one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He still had an 80.2 passing grade last year despite struggling at Georgia with, kind of like Drew Aller, an underwhelming receiving core with the Bulldogs with Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers going in the NFL. Georgia's receiving core really struggled last year. So Carson Beck is still one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, in my opinion. Just kind of forced it a little bit too much last year with the underwhelming receiving core. Over the last 2 years, he has a 90.9 PFF grade. That is second among all returning quarterbacks in college football. So if you look at his 2 years of work Carson Beck has as a starter, he's been an elite quarterback in college football. I think people are kind of forgetting about him. We're kind of shading him a little bit too much right now. So he's still an elite quarterback. Miami could not have done better to replace Cam Ward than get the best quarterback in the portal, in my opinion, in Carson Beck. Behind Carson Beck, you still have redshirt sophomore Emory Williams, who is entering his third year as Miami's backup and has a solid 71.3 career grade on 246 snaps. And also, Miami brought in a true freshman in Luke Nickel, who was a top 15 quarterback coming out in the 2025 class as well. So Carson Beck, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, in my opinion. You still have a proven backup, too, in Emory Williams, and you have a enticing true freshman coming in and Luke Nickel, too.
Yeah, there's way too much trash talk floating around about Carson Beck.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. Okay.
Kind of feels like Drew Aller last year when we were kind of defending Drew Aller to everyone else, and Beck kind of feels like that quarterback this year.
Yeah, I mean, what you have is a similar situation, not quite as bad because it's Georgia and they're always good, but the supporting cast at Georgia was not the same last year without Ladd McConkey, without Brock Bowers, with the offensive tackle struggling, right? And Beck, look, there's a clear cutoff. You keep him clean in the pocket, he's going to make the right throw and he's going to make it accurately. If he's under pressure, if your offensive line's not set up to succeed, then he's not going to. He's just kind of one of those classic pocket statue quarterbacks, but at what he does really, really well, right? And you mentioned it, you have Williams as the backup who's got some experience. I think Carson Beck is in for a good year. People are going to remember, look, this guy's pretty darn good. Maybe he's not the number one quarterback in the country because of a lack of mobility, but if they protect him, he's not going to move around like Cam Ward did. I don't think he's going to have quite the year that Cam Ward did last year, where in a lot of years he would have won the Heisman, but Beck can still have a really good season. I think Shannon Dawson's going to cook some things up for him from the pocket, and he's going to be just fine down there in Miami. Plus, and look, the ACC is a good conference. There's good teams. They're going to play good teams, and they have Notre Dame and Florida even on their schedule. It's not going to have to play an SEC defense every single week now in the ACC. So I do think Beck is still one of the best quarterbacks in college football. He is good. We can debate the draft stuff later. I'm not worried about that right now. To me, one of the 6 or 7 best QBs in college football in Miami. Look, if you're going to have to replace Cam Ward, you're probably not going to do a whole lot better than getting Carson Beck in the portal.
I think he was the best quarterback available in the portal this year. So I really think he could not have done better than him. And just kind of illustrate what Georgia lost in that receiving core. Georgia, with Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey in 2023, was 7th in the nation in receiving grade. This past year, they were 88th in the country in receiving grade. That's a big drop-off. And yet, still, Carson Beck still had an 80 PFF grade last year, even though, so many interceptions, yes, but so many drops from those receivers too. I think he was really let down by the supporting cast last year. Big question is, Miami losing Xavier Strepo and Elijah Arroyo and other talented pass catchers, what will their receiving core look like? That is a big question, yes, but I still think Carson Beck is one of the better quarterbacks in college football as well. So number 6 is the Miami Hurricanes. Before we get to the top 5 of my list, got to talk about the sponsor of the show. That is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does your child's future success look like to you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kid's investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest when they're minors, but a kid's investment account allows them to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and tutors to music classes, and when they're adults and out on their own, they can use the funds for anything that they need. It's all online. Manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. That's meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. meetfabric.com/PFFcollege. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right. Number 6 was a school in the ACC in Miami. Number 5 is another ACC school in the Clemson Tigers, who in my opinion have the best returning quarterback in college football in Kade Klubnik, arguably the most improved quarterback also in college football. Gave Jake Retzlaff a very good run for the Jake Retzlaff Award, as the most improved player in the country. Kade Klubnik was probably the number 2 player for that list. He was 107th in the nation in 2023 in passing grade with a 63.7 passing grade. This past year, 87.7 passing grade as well, which was 5th in the country. Klubnik has an 80.8 passing grade under pressure, was more than 5 points higher than any other quarterback in college football. So pretty easily, the best quarterback in the nation under pressure last year was Kade Klubnik. Behind Kade Klubnik, as you saw on the screen right there, is redshirt sophomore Christopher Vezina, who is a top 10 quarterback coming out in the 2023 class and will have spent 3 years on the bench at Clemson too. So yes, Kade Klubnik is, in my opinion right now, the best quarterback in college football, but Christopher Vezina is a really talented kid as well who looks like the future of the program.
Yeah, and if Vezina did have to take over, we've talked enough about Clemson's roster already this offseason, but man, you don't have to do too much with maybe the best defense in America, and you've got 3 really good receivers to work with in Brian Wesco, Antonio Williams, TJ Moore, right? We'll figure out where the running game goes, but Clemson has so much talent coming back that any quarterback's life should be easy. But you're right, this is about Klubnik. This is about the opportunity he has to carry this team deeper into the playoff than they got last year, to get a Heisman Trophy, to put up insane numbers in this offense that's going to be centered around him. And, for as much as, again, this list is about depth, sometimes it's about your top-line guy, too. Yeah. And there's not many quarterbacks you'd rather have, if any, going into this college football season than Kade Klubnik. So I think it feels like this is the last one of the list here that's really carried by the starter, but it's reasonable when you talk about on your list. He's no less, I think, on a lot of people's than top 3 going into next year with the year that he had last year and the year that he could have going into this year at Clemson. Klubnik really carries the room here, and he should have a huge season there at Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, this list is very having a great starter is very important on this list, which is why you see rooms like Auburn and Alabama and Ohio State a little bit lower on the list because they don't have a proven starter just yet. And even though they have a lot of really talented depth options in that room, Clemson has a star at quarterback in Kade Klubnik. And also, like I said before, Christopher Vezina was a top 10 quarterback coming out of high school too. So I'm intrigued to see what he could do next year as Clemson's starting quarterback. So number 5 is Clemson. Number 4 is the Florida Gators, with DJ Lagway entering his second year as Florida's starting quarterback. He's a top 10 quarterback in the country right now, in my opinion. He might have more arm talent than anyone else in college football as well. The number 1 quarterback coming out of high school in last year's class, led the Power 4 with an 8.8% big-time throw rate, and the 3rd best deep passing grade in the country last year with a 95.6 grade on 20-plus yard throws. Behind him, you acquired a Louisville transfer in Harrison Bailey, who actually a long time ago was the number 4 quarterback coming out of high school. Never really lived up to the hype during his career, I believe, at Tennessee and then at Louisville. But he actually started last year in the bowl game for Louisville with Tyler Shuck sitting out of it. He had a 78.4 PFF grade in that bowl game. So pretty solid backup there in Harrison Bailey. Also bring back Clay Millen for another year as probably the 3rd string quarterback. He was 8th among all quarterbacks in the country in 2022 with a 7.3% big-time throw rate as the starter at Colorado State. So he's a proven starter at Colorado State, had a really good year in 2022 at Colorado State. Now he's entering his second year with the Florida Gators as a backup quarterback. And you also brought in Tramel Jones, too, true freshman, who was a 4-star in the 2025 class, too. So legitimate, 4-deep quarterback room Florida's got, Dawn. And the number 1 guy, DJ Lagway, might have the most potential of any quarterback in the country.
Yeah, now we get into the fun part of this list where you have a potential superstar as your starter and then some really good depth behind it just in case anything happens, right? There's nobody there who's a threat to Lagway's job, but certainly to have guys like Bailey and Millen especially as the backups, because again, there comes a moment every single year. Maybe Lagway turns an ankle and misses 2 drives and things like that, but Bailey showed well, and I think those couple years at Louisville probably really going to help him. I've talked about Jeff Brom being one of the quarterback whisperers in college football. You would think fundamentally he got a lot better, even as the backup to Tyler Shuck and to Jack Plummer the year before, learns a lot spot under Jeff Brom, now goes and gets to be the backup at Florida. And look, Florida's got big expectations this year. If one of these guys comes in, there's going to be an expectation that they can still find a way to succeed, stay in the SEC race, stay in the playoff race. But this is really, again, this is about Lagway. The depth behind it is fantastic, but Lagway and the potential that he has and what he could be and what he's expected to be as a former number 1 recruit, that's carrying most of this, and then some really good depth behind it is what gets him into the top 4.
And they lost that game against Georgia because Lagway got hurt. They might have won that game against Georgia. They lost because Lagway gets hurt, and then the backup quarterback wasn't very good. I forgot who it was for them. I think it was like a walk-on, right, against Georgia? I gotta find the name, but yeah, it was.
I can't remember, but
I'll find it. But
I think weren't they even down to? Well, they were really down to a third stringer because Graham Mertz was also hurt, so it was really a third stringer. Man, I can't think of it right now.
I'm looking up right now, but they were winning that game, and then Lagway goes down with the injury. Aiden Warner.
That's it. Aiden Warner. That game was tied with 5 minutes left.
Yeah, and he went 7 for 22 in that game.
Right. If Lagway continues in that game, or maybe even if they had Mertz still healthy, right, they might have won that game with Graham Mertz in there. So I think I don't want to say lesson learned because he had the depth with Mertz and Lagway there. Billy Napier did, and just fell apart on him all in one game. But exactly, there comes a moment, right, where you need that depth to come through for you. They were tied with Georgia with 5 minutes to go. Just didn't happen, right, with that third stringer. So this is exactly why you build quarterback depth, because something's going to happen at some point in the season. And that's the exact situation where you go, hey, we need you to get through. We saw the year before, right, with Florida State. Should have been in the playoff, but you beat Florida with your backup. You beat Louisville with your third stringer to win the ACC title. It's the exact example you talk about of at some point something's going to happen, even to a superstar like DJ Lagway or all the other guys we're talking about. Florida clearly is taking that lesson to heart.
And you mentioned they were tied with 5 minutes left. They were legitimate. He got hurt early in that game. So, like, if they're tied with 5 minutes left, that means that they still played really well. They probably would have won that game against Georgia with DJ Lagway, and probably Georgia would not be playing in the college football playoff if they won that game too. So depth is really important in Florida. Definitely improve the depth there. Getting a guy like Harrison Bailey, bringing back Clay Millen for another year, and bringing in Tramel Jones, a 4-star quarterback in the 2025 class. So number 4 is Florida. At number 3 is Arizona State, who has my number 2 quarterback in college football in Sam Leavitt. He was one of the big surprises in college football last year, transferring in from Michigan State. 88.5 PFF grade, was 9th among all quarterbacks in college football, and he was the only quarterback in the country with 80-plus grades as a passer and as a runner. So like I said before, the best quarterback in the country, for me at least, behind Cade Klubnik, is Sam Leavitt, going back for another year, trying to win another Big 12 title, make a college football playoff again with the Sun Devils. And behind him is a very experienced backup in Jeff Sims, who started 26 games in his career across 5 years in college football with Georgia Tech, Nebraska, and now Arizona State as well. So Jeff Sims, obviously, when he was out there, wasn't the best quarterback, but very experienced with 26 career starts. I think he's a very experienced backup, and you have, like I said before, a superstar quarterback too in Sam Leavitt. That's why they're number 3 on this list.
Yeah, Leavitt's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Obviously, it starts there. You mentioned as a passer and as a runner. If he keeps the chemistry going with Jordan Tyson he had the second half of last year, he's in for a big, big season, and Arizona State's in for another big season in the Big 12. And you mentioned Sims even got one start last year, a loss up here to Cincinnati, but his rushing ability especially at least gives you a chance to win. You're going to game plan things a little differently with him than you would with Leavitt. Obviously, doesn't have the arm talent that Leavitt has, but he's experienced. He's a competitor. His rushing ability gives you a chance if you can play in one of those grinded-out, physical kind of defense, running game kind of games. So I think there's a lot of times where just that experience of being on the field, and so many teams have backups that don't have that, where, how many teams in the country do we look at and a backup comes in and they go, 0 career starts and 30 career snaps. There's even starters like that right now, because college football, there's still always the turnover, right, and guys leaving in the portal and graduating and all of that. But I think to have a guy like Sims, who's been in college football for 5 years now, right? Yeah. Look, it hasn't always been great. It's been a bumpy ride, but he's seen it all, and his legs certainly add another dimension to this offense.
Absolutely. So number 3, Arizona State, with one of the best quarterbacks in America in Sam Leavitt, and a very, very experienced backup with basically 2 years of starting experience in Jeff Sims for the Sun Devils as well. So number 3 are the Arizona State Sun Devils. Number 2 is SMU for me. Kevin Jennings, in my opinion, is a top 10 quarterback in the country. Again, like Sam Leavitt, was one of the biggest surprises in college football last year. We did not even expect him to start for the Mustangs last year with Preston Stone there. He takes over for Preston Stone, and he had a great year for SMU, leading them all the way to the ACC title game and to the college football playoff as well. Kevin Jennings was 10th among all quarterbacks in the country in clean pocket passing grade at 90.6 and overall passing grade with an 85 passing grade last year for the Mustangs. Behind him, and why they're really this high up on this list, is a very, very good backup in Tyler Van Dyke, transferring in from Wisconsin, likes Jeff Sims, very experienced player. He has started 31 games in his career for both the Wisconsin Badgers before getting hurt and also the Miami Hurricanes as well. And unlike Jeff Sims, Van Dyke has shown some really intriguing stuff when he was out there. In fact, Dalton, in 2023, he had an 85.3 passing grade with Miami Hurricanes that year. It was kind of his last year as a fully healthy season for Tyler Van Dyke, and he was like one of the 20 best quarterbacks in the country that year as well. If that's not enough, Ty Hawkins, also coming into the program as a true freshman, he was a 4-star in the 2025 class as well. So Jennings, top 10 quarterback in the country for me, but Tyler Van Dyke, man, might be the best backup quarterback in the country, and you have a 4-star true freshman in Ty Hawkins.
Certainly up there as long as he's coming off the injury healthy, because last year at Wisconsin, I believe it was the third game of the season, suffered a really ugly knee injury that caused him to miss the rest of the year, really threw Wisconsin's season into a tailspin. But you mentioned it, his work at Miami, and one thing that needs to be remembered here, could Van Dyke be starting maybe somewhere even at a G5 school or what have you? Sure, but back in 2021 when he first burst onto the scene, 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions at Miami, his offensive coordinator was SMU head coach Rhett Lashley, right? So you talk about he broke out. You know, Van Dyke, you could argue, even got Rhett Lashley the head coaching job at SMU, even though he had been there before. And then he had 2 more pretty good seasons at Miami. Obviously, some inconsistencies, especially 2023, but there's a lot of, Georgia Tech and not taking a knee involved in that. But Van Dyke, solid football player, and you mentioned it. To get a guy of this quality as your backup quarterback, especially with a coach that he's familiar with, I think maybe part of it was Lashley doing him a favor, going, look, you got me this SMU job, let me bring you back here. And look, Kevin Jennings, he runs around a lot. He's a wiry, skinny kind of guy. Sometimes he takes some hits that he shouldn't. There's going to come a moment. I'm telling you right now, there's going to come a moment where Van Dyke, even if it's just for a drive. We saw with Preston Stone last year. There were still times where he had to come into the game and he's throwing touchdowns and he's doing things in this SMU offense that keeps him on track.
Or if Jennings has a stinker game like the Penn State game, you could put in Van Dyke and just see what he has.
Or during the season, remember the Duke game? He had, I believe it was, 6 turnovers in that game, and they still found a way to win. They left him in there and wrote it out. But you wonder, Jennings has had his moments where you go, man, I might want to pull him out of here for a drive or two to calm him down, maybe go to the bullpen here. I think you could not do better as a backup than them getting Van Dyke. As long as he's healthy, he doesn't have the mobility Jennings does, but he's got an absolute rifle. And I'll tell you what, you look at his career, 64 big-time throws and 37 turnover-worthy plays. That's a guy who should probably be starting somewhere, and he chose to go down there with the connection with Lashley and get on a really good football team with SMU. It's a great situation for the Mustangs to be in.
This is a while ago, obviously, but I remember Tyler Van Dyke getting legitimate first-round buzz in the 2022 NFL Draft just because of how good he was in Miami. So you get a guy who was getting first-round buzz a few years ago, and Tyler Van Dyke is your backup quarterback now to Kevin Jennings. That's a great situation for SMU, who also, like I said before, has a 4-star true freshman, and Ty Hawkins as well. But it's not good enough to be number 1 on this list, because at number 1 for me is the LSU Tigers. LSU has a top 5 quarterback in America, in my opinion, and Garrett Nussmeier, a legitimate Heisman candidate as well. He had the 5th most passing yards in the country last year with over 4,000, and also tied for 7th with 26 big-time throws. LSU also brought in Michael Van Buren Jr. from Mississippi State, who actually had to start for the Bulldogs last year as a true freshman. And Dalton, he started 8 games in his true freshman year. His first 2 starts in his career were on the road against 2 elite defenses in Texas and Georgia. And what he did in those 2 games, he had a 79 passing grade, 5 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays against Texas and Georgia on the road in your first 2 career starts as well. So Michael Van Buren Jr. was impressive last year as a true freshman for Mississippi State. Now he's the backup at LSU as a true sophomore, most likely going to be the starting quarterback for LSU after Garrett Nussmeier goes on to the NFL draft too. So a really good backup of Michael Van Buren Jr. And you have a couple of former four-star recruits as well in true sophomore Juwan Johnson, who actually played running back for LSU last year. Now he's back to playing quarterback like he did in high school. And redshirt freshman Colin Hurley as well was a former star coming out of high school and is thankfully recovered from the serious car crash that he had last year. But LSU having a superstar in Garrett Nussmeier, Michael Van Buren Jr., who was really intriguing last year as a starter, as a true freshman at Mississippi State, and a couple former four-stars, too, in Juwan Johnson and Colin Hurley.
Yeah, Nussmeier, you start with Nussmeier. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, right? And he took the patient route of sitting behind Jaden Daniels for a couple of years and getting a little bit of mop-up reps and late in game and starting bowl games and things like that. But Nussmeier, I agree, is a top 5 quarterback in the country, and to have that guy as your base is certainly a good thing to have. And then you mentioned it, Van Buren's the interesting guy here because last year he was supposed to sit under Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State right behind Blake Shapen. Shapen gets hurt in the Florida game, and now he's going back to Mississippi State for another year, and LSU ends up with Van Buren possibly as their future. And you're right, you look at the starts, the 8 starts plus that action against Florida that he had when he first had to come in when Shapen suffered the injury, really all pretty good work considering Mississippi State was one of the worst teams in the country. And aside from the Tennessee game, that was really the only one where he laid an egg, but that was an elite defense you're playing in Tennessee, and Mississippi State just not equipped really as a team to beat any of these other teams in the SEC last year, but he still came out and played reasonably well considering the circumstances, right? So I think to have that guy both in the present with now 8 starts of SEC experience under his belt, you mentioned it, those 2 games against Texas and Georgia, how about 5 big-time throws and no turnover-worthy plays? Yep. That's what you're looking for out of a young kid in a big spot when their team is clearly overmatched by those other teams. Not too bad. They didn't play, I know it sounds weird, but they didn't play all that bad against Texas. Arch Manning was starting. There was a lot of hype around Texas. They didn't play all that bad offensively against Florida. So I think getting Van Buren even though he's really young, he's got the experience now. He's been through the SEC gauntlet. If you had to go to somebody, if something happened to Nussmeier, not a bad place to go, especially with a young kid that might be your future.
Absolutely. Yeah, so LSU checking in as my number 1 quarterback room in the country. Just kind of recap the top 10. Honorable mention was Texas, number 10, Ohio State, number 9, Alabama, number 8, Auburn, number 7, Penn State, number 6, Miami, number 5, Clemson, number 4, Florida, number 3, Arizona State, number 2, SMU, and number 1, LSU. Dawn, anything that sticks out in the top 10, anyone should be higher, lower, anyone that should be in this list, just kind of go behind the curtain a little bit. South Carolina and Baylor were the 2 that I was really considering to put in this top 10 with Lenore Sellers and Aaron Nolan now at South Carolina. And then Baylor's got Sawyer Robertson and Walker White transferring in from Auburn there as well. Anyone that should be in there or higher or lower, what do you think?
I don't know about a should, but I have to wonder if you also thought about Michigan too. With them, you got the number 1 recruit in the country in Bryce Underwood. We'll see if he's going to start right away or not. And then a really experienced, solid player in Mikey Keene, who's done a lot of good work at UCF and at Fresno State the last couple of years. So I wonder if Michigan, too, depending on – because I know you had a couple other guys, like Keelan Russell from Alabama was part of that group, Tavian St. Clair, part of the Ohio State group. Underwood's got maybe an easier path to starting than those other 2 guys have. And I know those 2 rooms have 3 guys that you feel really good about. In Michigan – probably only with 2. I know, Jaden Davis is probably the third stringer, right? You're sitting there. I wonder if with Michigan and how much you were weighing Underwood and Keene, maybe if they would have snuck their way pretty close to that conversation as well.
They were very much up there, too. Yeah, I definitely did consider them. It's just, starting a true freshman, even though one of the highest-rated true freshmen ever in Bryce Underwood. It's why they didn't make it in. I like Mikey Keene, too. I like the other rooms that we had here a little bit more. But, yeah, Jaden Davis is a top 10 quarterback coming out of high school, too. So, yeah, they were definitely in that list. It's a good call there. Anything else would you change? Do you think LSU is number 1, or would you put someone else there?
Man, I'll tell you, because I remember when you were first making this list, I was really stumping for SMU. I was like, man, we can't forget about Tyler Van Dyke. I would really almost think about SMU actually in the top spot. And, again, Jennings isn't the number 1 quarterback in the country. You had him number 10, which I think is perfectly reasonable. But to have a top 10 quarterback and a guy I would argue is the best backup if he's healthy. I think the knee injury for Van Dyke is a thing because that was an ugly injury he suffered last year against Alabama. So I think if he does come back, you know what? He knows Rhett Lashley. He can get on the field. I think you do have an argument for that top spot because I really like that situation they have down there at SMU.
Yeah, I think he definitely could be number 1 on this list too. I kind of just like Garrett Nussmeier. Obviously, I like more than Kevin Jennings. So, and then also Michael Van Buren Jr. was good enough as a true freshman for me to put him on this list. And then, like I said, a couple former 4-stars too, in Juwan Johnson, Colin Hurley.
I think too. I'll tell you the one that. I don't think I would put them higher because we haven't seen either of the guys prove it at a high level yet, at least statistically. But I really like the way Auburn has set themselves up too, right? With Arnold as a potential bounce back candidate. And I think Ashton Daniels also, horrendous, other than Alec Iamainer, just a horrible situation as far as supporting cast the last couple of years. They only won 2 or 3 games last year, right? And the pass protection wasn't there. He's scrambling for his life. I think Hugh Freeze and Ashton Daniels, if he had to go into a game, I think he could make that work because that kid's got athletic talent. He's physically really talented. I'm telling you, he just has to go out there and have better ball security and not try to force it so much. But I think at Stanford, he really tried to force it. So by the end of the year, with obviously, hopefully Arnold having a good year as the starter, and then Daniels sitting back there with Hugh Freeze coaching him and all the supporting cast, Auburn could be higher. I wouldn't put him higher right now, but I could see a situation where Auburn is higher on this list if you were to do it again at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. With 5-star recruit as your third-string quarterback, and then a proven starter in Ashton Daniels at number in your second string, and then Jackson Arnold's got a lot of potential as your starter. Yeah, that could be a lot higher. I kind of want to put them 8, 9, and 10, Auburn, Alabama, and Ohio State, because they don't have a true starter, a proven starter just yet. That's why I put them as the last 3 right there. But I kind of want to also put them in the list because I said, listen, the 3 that they have are really good a 3-headed room for those 3 schools. But all right, that wraps up my top 10 quarterback rooms in college football entering 2025. I want to remind you guys, we're doing more of these position unit rankings. In fact, the next one we got coming out on Thursday is our top 10 running back units in college football entering the 2025 season. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of those position unit rankings coming out very, very soon. For Dalton Wasson, for producer Eli back there, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys on Thursday with my top 10 running back units in college football.